So thank you so much, Natasha, for the warm welcome for IHR. I won't go into what you said again from there. I'm Michael from Equitas. We're voice-led interview software to try and bring fairness to hiring and help companies build diverse teams. Today, we've got an incredible lineup of speakers. So the first thanks out of the gate are to Paul, Rebecca, CATHAL. Thank you so much for giving up your time and coming up with some really quality content for today. A massive thank you to everyone that I've spoken to over the last 6-7 weeks for the event as well. Every HR tech founder, head of talent, head of recruitment across these different companies and recruitment managers. There's a few of you, I think, who are on the webinar, or a few of you who will watch it on Rewind on demand as well. Thank you for your time. The insights have been absolutely incredible, and it's something that we're going to dig into and focus on detail. And looking at that poll that's already come up as well, a couple of the areas that you're concerned about are hopefully going to be the ones that we cover in a little bit of detail as well. So agenda, I'll do a quick intro, high level, before CATHAL gets talking. And CATHAL is going to talk us through post-pandemic hiring trends and candidate attraction. Rezoomo, talent acquisition software, and CATHAL's the CEO there. He's got some incredible insights to share with you. Same with Rebecca at Hatching Ideas, and she's going to give an internal perspective when she was at the NHS as well throughout the pandemic. Innovations in healthcare hiring from that internal perspective is going to be amazing. And she's the only non-Irish one here, so probably the most understandable throughout. But me, CATHAL, and Paul know we need to go at pace in order to make sure that we get through as much content as possible within this session. I'll talk a little bit about hiring technology landscape, DEI, and automation tools as well. It will just be a one slide, and I'll go into different providers in a good amount of detail, but hopefully we can get some good insights out of that as well. And then to finish with, Paul, I hope we don't run out of time before we get through to a bit of a case study with the work that you've been doing throughout the pandemic and rolling out multiple technology systems and implementing things across 7 hospital groups all at once. So really looking forward to finishing on that one. So the future of healthcare hiring, I don't think throughout my entire career within interview selection assessment space that there's ever been more rapid change than the last 18 months. And I'm sure everyone on this call is going to be able to tell us. If you're talking in the chat, let us know the challenges that you've been facing. Let us know the questions you've got and what the next sort of 18 months, 24 months is going to look like as well, because the amount of transformation and change that everyone's responded to has been absolutely incredible. And some of the key challenges that we're facing from those experts that I spoke to within the space: talent shortages for niche roles. It is a candidate-led market at the minute, making it quite difficult to find the right roles and finding those qualified candidates that we're looking for. But hopefully with what CATHAL says and a few of the things that I start to talk about, there are tools, technologies, and ways to help you get those niche candidates and help you get a wide as reach as possible. Scaling talent teams post pandemic. I don't know if anyone else's LinkedIn is absolutely exploding at the minute, but it seems like recruitment managers, talent roles are in higher demand than developers for the first time in my life. So amazing to see. It's challenging to bring those people up to speed and get them skilled for what you need to do within the healthcare space. Legacy IT systems, that was a brilliant bit of feedback. I've heard some providers having 11 plus different systems that they need to jump between, or one centralized system that doesn't do everything that it needs to be, or it's been broken with the volumes that have come through within the pandemic as well. And what that's led to over the last 18 months has been a complete remote transformation and digitization. And some of it's there to stay, and some of it still needs modernized further as well. One key concern everyone was worried about with frontline and entry-level hiring was churn and retention and the work-life balance. Over the last 18 months, people have been asked to do quite a lot, and they're starting to think about, hey, is a career change what's going to be something different? And those people who have changed careers and come in, is healthcare what they expected? Are they getting the benefits that they were wanting? Are they getting that rewarding career choice that they think that they've made? Has it been sold to them in the right way as well? And then the last thing on top of this, diversity, equity, inclusion, culture, benefits, people strategy. We're having to weigh up all these different priorities amid hiring at quite a scale, quite a pace at the same time as well. So some of the themes that we'll want to touch on today: talent pipelining, super important to build that talent pool of your candidates out. One of the juxtapositions I heard from a lot of providers was agency versus in-house recruiters. Some are still using agency and think it's the way forward. Others are trying to upscale their in-house teams from there as well. Whenever it gets to the technology piece, I'm going to tell you about candidate communications technology. CATHAL will do the same. There's lots of different ways to keep your candidates engaged and do it quicker than you've ever done before. using technology to reduce bias. And then finally, Rebecca will maybe touch a little bit on this as well. Values-based hiring is something that's really coming in, especially for volume roles, to make sure we're getting people who are going to stick with us for the long run as well. Wider HR talent and hiring trends. So 25% of the workforce is actively looking to move roles post-pandemic, and that's the Indeed metadata that's coming through. So everyone stayed put throughout the pandemic. There's now going to be a lot of change happening throughout that time. With the younger generation that's coming into the workforce as well, Gen Z, 46% increase in the number of jobs that they're going to have throughout their lifetime. So people might jump between roles more and more, meaning there's going to be more job flow, and your talent functions are going to need to be able to deal with this increased volume as well. And then the last thing, this is one of the most startling statistics whenever I tell you when this was from, this research. 99% of people want some part of their work to be remote. This is from Buffer before the pandemic hit. So this has been solidified, and now everything has to have some sort of remote offering within the role. And it's hard to attract within healthcare for that, because not all of our roles are remote, and there is a good bit of face-to-face that still needs to happen. So it's how do we balance that and make sure that we still get great people coming in. So that leads me on to our first speaker, because it's challenging to attract the right talent within healthcare. CATHAL is the founder, CEO of Rezoomo talent acquisition software. And I don't think there's many more people in the whole of Ireland who know more about attracting candidates using technology. So CATHAL, I'll hand it over to you. I'll let you do your own intro, and let me just know when you want to move between slides as well.
Perfect, will do. Thanks, Michael. Good morning, everybody. As Michael said, my name is CATHAL DOORLEY. I'm the CEO of Rezoomo, Irish-based company, talent acquisition. Thanks to Michael and Equitas for having us this morning, and to Natasha and IHR for running the event. So just to give you by way of introduction, Rezoomo is a talent acquisition software. We work with over 40 hospitals and healthcare providers in Ireland, and we have been doing so for the past number of years. We have seen, over the past 3 years, nearly 60,000 healthcare recruitment roles posted by our clients through the system. Hundreds of thousands of applications, but that was in the past 3 years. In the past 2 years, really, since the pandemic hit, we've seen the majority. We've seen about 30,000 of those, 20 to 30,000 of those roles posted in the past 18 months. So there was a huge increase, obviously, in the recruitment healthcare, obviously with the pandemic. So we've seen, over 1,000 vaccinators hired in the past year alone. And recruitment is obviously a major focus for all healthcare industries in each country around the world due to the pandemic. So we've been speaking a lot with our customers, and we've seen over the past 3 years just a number of key areas that they're starting to focus on. And I'm just going to jump into one of them, which is employer branding. So employer branding, look, it's nothing new. It's been around for years, but I think hospitals, it's never been a key focus for the hospitals. And what we're seeing from our customers and from speaking with our customers, that it's starting to become more of a thing that they want to address and harness. So in-house, teams within hospitals, they don't really have kind of marketing departments. They might have communications departments and so on, but we don't generally see marketing departments in our clients over in Ireland anyway. So a lot of the stuff I'm speaking about today is from our own experience in the Irish market, and now we're kind of starting to branch into the UK and beyond. So employer branding is becoming a lot more of an interest to all of our clients and to healthcare in Ireland in general. I mean, it's ultimately, it's a highly skilled industry, but it's driven by people. So harnessing and building your employer brand to attract the right candidates with the right skills is extremely important, but it's something that has been neglected by the industry. It just hasn't been a priority for them. So now that they're starting to focus on it more and looking at, building rich and engaging content for career sites, and especially if they're trying to attract candidates from abroad. So, we've got thousands of applications from abroad. So really talking about the hospital and what the culture is like and what the people is like, and also kind of what candidates can expect before they apply. So just going down through the points here. The employer branding, it will help them to attract more informed, qualified candidates, because candidates will get a much better feel for the hospital and what it's like and what the people are like there. I mean, employer branding, all the other companies, like in other industries, use it, and it should be a core part of the whole recruitment function. So now that hospitals are putting more effort into it, they are starting to see the benefits of it. We're getting more informed and more qualified candidates, because candidates can get a much better feel for the hospital, what the people are like there. This also helps in retention as well. So hiring the right people, because they are much more informed when they're making an application, is very important. So that's employer branding. The second one, and possibly the most important to the people that we speak to, is expanding their reach. So a lot of the hospitals in Ireland and in the other areas and markets that we speak to, they've been using generic jobs boards always, particularly in Ireland. Just relying on 2 or 3 jobs boards to find the people is just not going to cut it anymore. Your talent is online all the time in various different communities or niche channels across social media and search and display. So moving away from just focusing on using the generic jobs boards is extremely important. One thing that we see, there's companies out there, they're like Vonk, which provide solutions for distributing your job across a wide variety of channels is very important. So moving away from just having a contract with 1 or 2 or 3 jobs boards and doing that for the year and putting a lot of your budget into just 2 or 3 channels is very prohibitive. So if you go on to the next slide there, Michael. In a lot of the hospitals in Ireland, they wouldn't have used applicant tracking systems before or so on. So they're seeing the benefit of these marketplaces within these solutions. So, for example, just one company who's a good example is Vonk. So they've got over 2,500 channels built into the software that you can have access to, instead of just relying on the 1 or 2 or 3 channels all the time and putting all of your budget into those channels for the whole year. That really restricts what you can do with your job distribution. So the benefits of these systems is plug and play, so you don't have to get into any contracts with any of the jobs boards. You've got a wide variety of jobs boards. It's more cost effective because these companies have buying power with all of these distribution channels. And it allows you to play around with the distribution channels and find the best channels that work for you, because the generic jobs boards, while they're good and they have a place and they'll always be there, but utilizing Google Display or niche channels like the British Medical Journal, and being able to buy all those channels through your recruitment software is very, very important. And it gives you the flexibility to try out new things and not just put all of your budget into 2 or 3 channels for a whole year. So you want to go on there again, Michael? So the employer branding and the expanding your reach and using the various different channels is very important. And another one that we're seeing a lot of our customers focus on is candidate experience. So you want to provide a best-in-class candidate experience from the minute your candidate is looking at your recruitment ad campaign, and that's ultimately where the candidate experience begins. So we've noticed I'm not sure if it's quite just an Irish thing, but extremely long, detailed ad campaigns or job descriptions that go into huge detail, and they can go on for a couple of pages. So we're starting to see customers use video more, not just in the engagement piece, but in the attraction piece. Because a short video can really allow you to get a lot of information across to your candidates and help you to attract better candidates who, they can make a more informed application if they've got all of the correct information to make that decision. And we're starting to see video being used a lot more now in the ad campaigns, and using rich content in the ad campaigns to attract the candidates, and moving away from those text-heavy job descriptions that can last for a couple of pages. The employer branding piece also feeds into your ad campaigns, obviously, utilizing the team. For example, a staff nurse, grade 5-1 here, utilizing the nursing team to sell the role and to attract the people to apply for the job is extremely important. And it does take time, but it's ultimately free, content that you can be creating to attract those people, because all the hospitals, they're all fighting for a limited pool of candidates. Obviously, there's hospitals everywhere, so everybody is fighting for the same candidate. So it's very important to take the step in creating more rich and engaging ad campaigns to attract suitable staff. Another big one I'm sure everybody will be familiar with is web accessibility in the recruitment process. Very, very important. Just in Europe, there was an EU directive in September 2019, I think. The past couple of years it was running into each other. I think it was 2019, the EU directive that all public sector websites had to be accessible to people with various different disabilities. So tools like ReCiteMe can be extremely useful for this. ReCiteMe is a tool that provides loads of really useful accessibility options for your candidates when they're actually viewing your ad campaigns. So it's got tools that can transform your language into over 100 different languages, because as we know in Ireland, we have so many applications from abroad. So making sure that your job campaigns are accessible to everybody is very, very important. And if this also feeds into the diversity and inclusion and building a diverse workforce. If you want to do that, then you need to make sure that your jobs are accessible to people with various different disabilities, or in different languages, or whatever it might be, because you want to make sure that your jobs are accessible to everybody. So it's very, very important that you enable accessibility tools in your ad campaigns. So then just in the staying on the candidate experience, the application process, and we've seen it in Ireland, the lengthy application process, and we've really been pushing for clients to shorten it. So up to 60% of candidates can quit during the middle of an application because it's lengthy or complex. And we've seen this, and what you want to do is to get everybody in the top of the funnel and let the software help you manage it, but you don't want to put barriers up for people applying for jobs. And it's very, very important that the application process be made as streamlined as possible, and providing a number of different options for your candidates to be able to apply for your jobs. Then engagement. So we've seen a massive increase in candidate engagement over the past 18 months, using video and audio to actually engage with candidates instead of just using text and email. So building, relationship building with the people who you really want to hire is very, very important. It can give you that edge over any of your competitors down the road or in your vicinity. And using video and audio to build that relationship with candidates is very, very important. And then using your recruitment technology to automate volume campaigns, build really good onboarding experiences is very, very important. So just to lay out those points, the employer branding becoming more and more important in healthcare, we see, and then utilizing tools to expand your reach and not be putting all of your budget into a small number of channels, and then using your software then to manage all of the recruitment process.
CATHAL, thank you so much. You've squeezed as much as you physically could into that short gap. So we're going to move swiftly on. Up next is Rebecca from Hatching Ideas and NHS. So Rebecca, let's see if we can make this slide deck switch work. And if we've got any issues, we can always go off my slides here as well. So let me see If you can start sharing now, Rebecca, and it should come through.
Have a go and see if this works. I'm gonna select share screen, just keeping the audience updated in terms of what I'm doing. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see this on the screen. I can't actually see. Yes, thank you to Natasha for giving me the heads up. As Michael said, my name is Rebecca Bridger. I am the founder and CEO of a consultancy firm called Hatching Ideas. We specialize in what I describe as that sticky impact spot, which is right where organization development and learning development meet. And that is the point where you say, actually, in terms of people and processes, what does that look like? But how do you equip individuals as a result of that as well? And I have a slightly unique perspective on the pandemic because I've had the privilege of being able to bridge multiple sectors and multiple roles during this time. So I've worked in the public sector, as Michael touched upon, within the NHS, within an interim director of OD role. I've been advising firms during this time, myself and my team. I should merit it as not just myself, with organizations. And then I am in turn a small business owner. So I understand the experiences of what it's like to go through some of the recruitment, but I am focusing on that first one, what it has been like in terms of the healthcare industry and what that means in terms of the trajectory of recruitment moving forwards. I mean, I think we all know it. COVID-19 has completely changed in so many respects the way in which we recruit for healthcare, particularly within the NHS. And when the pandemic first kicked off, I think what we expected was this decline of going, goodness, a reduction, a pause. For me, it was such a stark comparison to everyone else when my peer group, my friends, my family were all bedding in at home and preparing for lockdown. Myself and so many other colleagues in the NHS were traveling into work on these sort of quiet zombie trains with no one else around. Someone described it as being the Mary Celeste. And what we expected was recruitment to also decline as a result of this as well, around going, oh, good grief, let's wait until the dust settles. And instead, we had the absolute reverse because demand was huge. And I do think it's not just a straight line, because actually it is quite a squiggly line of us going, oh, crikey, how are we going to deal with this? We now have an influx of demand within the organizations that we need to appoint to. And suddenly all the norms that we're used to recruiting to have disappeared. How on earth are we going to do this? And as a result, the learning curve was by no means a straight line, but in many ways a squiggly one. Some of the things that I experienced in particular from the internal side of things was a palpable sense of fear. So within healthcare organizations, as I'm sure everyone on this call knows, you have this dichotomy between clinical and corporate teams. For the corporate teams in particular, there was this sense of, oh my goodness, how can I support others within the organization? But also this absolute trepidation around going, what happens if I get called up to the front line? And at the same time, you had this compelling sense of purpose. And I think it was this sense of purpose that meant that this squiggly line that I brought up on the screen was how actually we have managed to navigate those scribbles and the challenges to go, how do we make recruitment within our current context work? Because we know that we need to. There is an absolute lack of data across the board because, and this is no criticism to NHS organisations, we suddenly had to have information around how far people were commuting and what this meant in terms of whether or not they had children at home and if their local school would allow them to drop their children off. And this was just not the type of information that we had ever had to ask for before, let alone have at our fingertips. There was then also this pivot within most, and not all, but most organizations to go, crikey, it's about the individual and the entirety of their life and not just about what they're doing within their role. And so what this resulted in was not only a change in data, but also how we realigned the focus that we had on workforce individuals. There are huge infrastructure challenges because, even the transition over into using Zoom and then subsequent to that Teams was an uncomfortable one because access to information hadn't been historically made available from a remote basis. And then from the recruitment perspective, I'd say there are absolutely capability challenges. By and large, when we'd recruited historically, in a lot of ways, we let the environment speak for itself. When the environment is this little screen in which you're suddenly describing what it's like to be on the shop floor and what it is that we're focusing on, this really revealed some of the gaps in individuals to be able to authentically articulate what it meant to work within that organization, which actually touched upon the earlier point around that employee brand, that ability to articulate that employee brand, but also to be able to measure against it really revealed a lack of capability. And then the need to rethink measures as well as a result of it. I am actually not a huge fan of the term cultural fit because I think it implies that you need to fit and your face needs to fit in order to work somewhere. We are moving away from that in terms of instead seeing cognitive diversity, but alignment around values and behaviors. The ability to measure values and behaviors remotely and having a framework to do that was again a gap, but I would say something that huge numbers of organizations are suddenly going, goodness, we know and we recognize that we need to have this in place, particularly to provide reassurance when we are only interviewing individuals remotely. So what does this mean for individuals in teams? Well, for one thing, our new normal, and this is now, I am talking to you from a new normal, is being threatened. We absolutely have individuals for whom I have now changed the way in which my working habits are, and I don't want to see them move. Michael gave that fantastic example of the stats and buffer. At 99%, they wanted to be able to do some sort of working remotely, and that was before the pandemic. We know expectations have shifted, and individuals within the healthcare industry and all industries and sectors, I think, are going to be increasingly strong about saying what that looks like. I think this tweet, for those of you who have read it, sums it up fantastically, particularly that I don't want to wear blazers or hell, even shoes. I mean, for me, it's been very much a case of I don't want to wear a bra unless it's got any form of wire in it. It's not going to happen. People's expectations have changed. But within healthcare, there is an uncomfortable balance, which is that we have clinical and corporate teams. And this results in the risk of a two-tier system, i.e., some corporate teams can and will be able to work remotely, whereas the same luxury will not be necessarily available for individuals working within clinical roles. And what I saw was an almost palpable tension at times between those two groups: visibility, accessibility, and what that means throughout the recruitment process. And for organizations, as a result, this flags two, I would say, quite critical things that need to be considered when we are addressing what this looks like moving forwards. The first is the skill sets and the tool sets that we have available to us. We have had to transition to be able to having in place the right measures, the right frameworks, the right abilities to be able to do what we need to do from a recruitment perspective. That is the platforms that we use, that is the frameworks that we have in place in order to measure the right behaviors and attributes of staff. And the second is, I am bringing my coaching hat into this, is the mindset of the organization in order to be open to that change. What that fear and purpose combination gave organizations within the healthcare industry was a sense of purpose that said, actually, we know this needs to be done. And given how much is uncomfortable, actually changing to remote interviews is significantly less comfortable, and therefore we are going to do it. But I suspect there will be a little bit of a movement back still to going, how much can we and should we do moving forwards remotely? And that mindset is intrinsically linked with the skill sets and the tool sets available within healthcare organizations. And I would say perhaps one of the points that most resonated with me when I was thinking about this recently within organizations was this fact that 78% of HR leaders felt that the greatest challenge in driving a success of a hybrid workforce model was in fact the mindsets of individuals in leadership positions more so than the skill sets. And the reason why I flag this is that hybrid workforce model is also our ability to be able to interview, recruit, appoint, resource, manage, and upskill individuals from a new way of working. And that new way of working is a remote based. I have kept to my 10 minutes. I have rattled through on some points. These are all topics of which there's so much more to talk about. But Michael, I will hand back over to you, as I hope that gives you a quick whistle-stop tour of some main points.
Amazing. Thank you, Rebecca. Let's see if I can share my screen okay. And if someone gives me a thumbs up on the panel, or let me know that you can see the screen. Perfect. Thank you so much, Rebecca. So on to me next, and I am going to have to go at this at proper pace now because we've only got, how long? 23 minutes left, 22 minutes, and I definitely want you to get you chatting to Paul at the end here. So I'm Michael BLAKLEY, co-founder of Equitas. We offer voice-led interview software that focuses on fair and inclusive hiring practices so that companies can build diverse teams. We're working with some of the biggest hospital groups back in Ireland and a mixture of different technology companies based in UK, London as well. Today, I'm going to talk to you about something I'm super passionate about, and it's however we automate the process and however we can make sure it's nice, fair and inclusive, and making sure that we've got diverse hires. I will not have time to go through every provider that I've got in front of the screen here, but the way I've started to segment it out will be quite useful. And looking at some of those comments from earlier today, attraction and candidate engagement is maybe one area we can go into in detail. Screening and sifting, definite ways to automate the process, make sure it's fair from there. And then interview and assessment, that's the space that we sit in with a couple of providers there as well. To give you an idea, there's people on the attraction piece like Rezoomo who help you do it end to end with everything built in under one system. If you're looking for fair and inclusive hiring language whenever it comes to those job adverts, look at people like GetOptimal and Data People, some really interesting tools like them and Textio that can make sure that you've got inclusive ads. But that's just the start of the process and what you should be doing. For social media campaigns, CATHAL talked about people like Vonk who can help you give that reach over different channels, but we're not experts whenever we're creating that content. There are lots of different agencies and experts out there that can help you. One of the best within the UK is Wiser. For early stage careers especially, they can help get those social channels working for you to get a really diverse pipeline of candidates, no matter what role that you're hiring for off there. Some of the other interesting providers I talk to can be really niche. So if you look out for some technology providers, they can give you some really nice niche solutions like ApplyChat, who focuses mainly in the US, but have some UK ties as well around hiring solely for nurses. They help you get the right ad campaigns out there with location specific sort of technology put in there on top of it as well to make sure that you're getting nurses cheaper than any agency could ever get you as well. Crouton, I spoke to John and Stephen at the team there as well. They are really doubling down on that geocentric approach. So for location, usually it's within 90 miles of wherever your role is because people aren't willing to relocate a lot of the time unless there's benefits and packages as well. Having those geocentric adverts can make it really beneficial to make sure that you're getting the right people through and hired. And the last one, Robo Recruiter, for candidate engagement and candidate automation and of that whole channel. They can manage your candidate pipeline end to end, and they did some amazing stuff throughout the pandemic. They helped one particular hospital group get about 5,000 applications to vaccinators in less than 24 hours, looking at their existing ATS as well. So for any of those high volume campaigns, Robo is amazing for getting that candidate communication piece automated to save your recruiters time and get focused on the value add work that they can do. For screening and sifting, Recce are incredible. They're voice led as well. They help you do all your screening calls and again, cut down the amount of time that you need getting qualified candidates through to you earlier. Arctic Shores and ThriveMap, another two amazing providers. Behavioral based assessments for Arctic Shores and ThriveMap. If you have a role where you need 50 plus hires for one particular role, they help create really next generation situational judgment tests to make sure that people are opting in, opting out, and those final stage people that you get to are the ones that you need for that particular role. And Mivite, the last one I'll have time to talk to you about a little bit today, is they go into your ATS, they make sure everything's blind in the name of fairness as well. So removing identifying characteristics of figures, and they can also help talent pooling and doing that in a nice fair way using different bias reducing algorithms as well. For us, we double down on the interview space, making sure it's fair, structured, and capturing all your interview data. So I can talk to you a little bit more about us whenever it comes to chatting with Paul as well. I want to share this resource with you afterwards, which is HR recruitment useful tools whenever it comes to diversity. So whether it's training providers that you're looking for, different tools and technology, whether it's reading resources, whether it's ideas from other employers, this one Excel spreadsheet, not the best way to represent it, but it has an incredible amount of resources for you to look at. It was created by a head of people, Jessica Hayes, and it is definitely something you all need to have a quick read at. Depending on what your pain points and your challenges are around diversity, there will be some takeaways from this document alone. It's incredible. I've referred it to so many people, and it's absolutely amazing. Whenever it does come to that interview piece, what we see in healthcare is it's super important. The level of structure that you use is incredible. And a lot of the time it's been around a competency and technical based model, which are really good predictors within healthcare, which is important because a lot of the time we're dealing with people's lives here. What is becoming more and more important is like what Rebecca mentioned around that values and that motivational piece as well. So making sure that we are asking the right question to find out what drives people and whether they're going to be with us for the role for the long run is super important to get right as well. So by making sure that you're asking the right questions whenever it gets to those final stages can be far more predictive of how long people end up staying with you as well. And the last piece before we jump in with Paul here, I know I've rattled through this 100 miles an hour, so if you do want more detail, do feel free to reach out to me afterwards. So the last piece I'm going to talk to you about is diverse panels have a massive impact whenever it comes to making fair hiring decisions. If you at the minute are using solo interviewers just because of resource alone, try to make it a panel, but temper that with the resources that you've got as well. This study from Google was incredible. Once you get past 4 interviewers or 4 reviewers on a panel or throughout multiple stages, the actual accuracy doesn't go up that much. So if you're having a panel interview, 2, 3, 4 people is good, and it'll add that sort of different realm of thought, different thought process as well. But what we encourage you to do is don't go much past that because the accuracy doesn't go up with that. So be clever about it, use the right resources when you're trying to build those diverse teams, but don't go overkill and interview candidates to death after 10, 15, 20 interviews from there. You can get it right in a short interview process, saving both sides time. And whenever you do get to scoring, make sure that you're trying to get the panelists to score separately and then collate it together. And if you can do that anonymously, it saves you so much hassle in the long run. So I'm going to get Paul to come in now. And Paul, I'll still have control of the slides. Paul from RCSI Hospital Group, you're one of the HR business partners there. If you want to do a quick introduction, I can maybe leave the slide up as well. So you've got a bit about RCSI in case you want to tell us in a bit more detail.
Brilliant, Michael. Thanks so much. And just to give a nod as well to Rebecca and Cathal for their brilliant presentations earlier on. They touched on an awful lot of the challenges that we're faced with in the RCSI Hospital Group at the moment also. So we are, as the slide says, one of the largest hospital groups within the HSE. We have close to 11,000 employees across 7 different hospital sites in Ireland that range from various different locations, from Cavan and Monaghan all the way to a number of hospitals in Dublin as well, and Drogheda and County Louth. So just to touch on Thomas's question that actually came into the Q&A also before we get into a bit more detail. Thomas, what we're doing from a group perspective is we are focusing in on additional kind of perks that we can offer future job seekers and future employees, such as in education support policy, reduced cost of living in some of our areas. So we're kind of focusing in on that leadership development programs that we want to run in the group, because you're exactly right. It can be very difficult to attract candidates. The fact that everyone's operating off the same pay scale and everyone's competing for the same candidates. So we're trying to target that audience with a different number of incentives that we offer in the RCSI Hospital Group. So we're facing the exact same challenges as was mentioned by Rebecca and Cathal earlier. So people want remote working, people want more time at home, and as well as that, it's if the pandemic wasn't challenging enough, we also had the added difficulty of a recent cyber attack in Ireland and the HSE, which shut down absolutely everything, from a patient perspective, from a recruitment perspective, the whole lot. So at that time, we're in week 8 of it now, and we could have done exactly what Rebecca touched on, and that recruitment could have just stopped altogether. But we had to think creatively. We had to be more innovative in our approach, and that's why we launched our ATS slightly earlier than expected. So we could still continue posting our adverts, getting our campaigns, bringing our candidates through the workflow. And also we engaged with Michael on Equitas to be able to hold interviews during this time. Because what we found when we were looking across the 7 different sites was that when the pandemic happened in March, there was various different platforms being used. There was no consistency of approach. So there was WebEx, there was Skype, there was Zoom, there was MS Teams. So each candidate, while they were all coming to within hospitals, within the group, we're all having a different experience. And I suppose our goal from the group perspective is to try and achieve absolute perfection in the employee experience. Now, we know that's completely unattainable because no one's perfect apart from the couple of presenters here today. But we're hoping to find excellence along the way from an employee perspective. So that's why we're moving to kind of these remote interview platforms.
And how has it been so far, Paul? Because you kind of touched on it there. Probably the most challenging rollout I've ever seen in my life, where you had you had an ATS that was supposed to be rolled out over a matter of months, and then on top of that came the hack as well. So how has it been? Like, how did you even deal with those challenges? Because I bet you that's the burning question a lot of people are asking you. Like, how did you do all this amid a cyber attack as well? It must have been crazy a few weeks for you.
Yeah, it continues to be. It continues to be because, again, we had a lot of different infrastructure resources as well. So let's just say the Wi-Fi connectivity in some of the sites wouldn't be the best. So we had the added headache of that as well. But through great engagement and constant communication with our recruiters in all the various sites, and great buy-in from them, and they want to learn and they want to change from the kind of manual paper-based system that was in place to becoming more automated as well. And what it's worked out so far, Michael, has been in that because the whole interview process is a more automated response. It's a great selling point for interview boards to not have to take notes of an interview and for having the whole interview recorded and transcribed for us. It means it reduces time after the event of scanning notes up onto a shared drive. It even assists much more so in feeding back to the candidates as to how exactly they got on during the interview. So what we're finding is, from now, since we've engaged with Equitas and we're running our campaigns through it, is after the event, we can contact our candidates who are successful, our candidates that we are regretting also, in a much quicker fashion. So that alone is improving our employee experience as well.
Amazing. And like, if any of them do listen into this on Rewind or record, I've never met a better group of users as well. And because of the hack, because we've been doing it on boards via telephone, I feel like I'm getting to know them all personally. So I absolutely love them at the minute, but they're probably sick of me giving them calls to get them on board and get them going. So some of the results I've sort of thrown up there as well, and you've got kind of big plans for RCSI, and I don't know if it's the same for the other hospital groups or healthcare providers who are on at the minute, in terms of, I think you're going to experience a massive growth in terms of number of vacancies.
Exactly, yeah. So we've done a workforce plan recently, and like that, we're kind of predicting a bit of a mass exodus, especially when countries start opening their borders again later in the year, because those who were unable to go traveling last year and had to come back and cut their traveling short as well in March. So we are thinking that there will be a bit of an exodus later on this year. So we're gearing up for that, and we're starting to really put a bit of drive behind building our employer branding and engaging with candidates that are overseas. To kind of build that talent pipeline, so to speak, that we can pull on to fill these vacancies as and when they come up and when people are retiring from the organisation. Again, we're forward planning for all that. So the stats there are exactly right. We were 100% remote when we're in level 5 restrictions. Obviously, restrictions are easing. So there are certain sites that are getting back to face-to-face interviewing, which is great. That's ultimately what we want. But as well as that, all overseas and international recruitment campaigns will be done via Equitas remotely. So it will definitely hope to fill all those vacancies that we foresee coming up.
Amazing. And I put in a couple of little pieces of feedback that some of the users have pinged across, and I hope hope Keith doesn't mind that I left one in there when he said after his first panel of not having to take interview notes, he was just like, it's the only way forward.